Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei become a pure evil part 1. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video and also share this video with your friends. I have created my other videos playlist, there you can watch my all videos easily, check out as well. Let's start this video. So pitch black is the only thing I can more or less see. A young man looked at his surroundings and thought with sarcasm. Great. My vision is blurry, my senses are twisted, and my mind, well, just by the fact that I am speaking like this is proof enough that I'm not well. The brown-haired boy thought to himself while hoping that a certain someone would say something, anything at all at his comment. Waiting for a little while, praying for the dragon's voice to be heard, he instead got silence. Praying. Kind of ironic, if you think about it, knowing he is a devil or well, was. Yet praying for the answers from his friend, what would others say? But, how did he manage to stop being a devil? How could that happen? It didn't make sense. The evil pieces inside of him were linked to his body, and more than that, to his emotions, feelings, and to his soul. Removing them was akin to suicide. But the fact that he was breathing and sweating heavily proved otherwise. With his vision returning and more or less stable, he remembered where he was. The normal-looking cave. Well, you could say that if you ignored how awful the location actually was. It was filled with holes, cracks, rubble, and rocks. Really a terrible place to be at. Each crack was as long as an arm, and the holes were of various sizes, from not bigger than a coin to almost the size of a full human adult. How the cave was still standing and not actually destroyed was a mystery no one wanted to solve. Leading into the depths of that same cave, you could distinguish, if you had a decent sight, a boy with wounds horrible enough to make the best doctors pale in fright. He was laying down in a pool of his own blood inside a small crater not bigger than the boy himself. If you looked close enough, right onto his body, you could find 8 wounds in the size and shape of a small billiard ball. Among them, the most prominent ones being right on his chest. Those wounds were 3 holes, all taking the shape of an inverse triangle. They were filled with blood that had yet to coagulate and charred pieces of meat that were still falling off his body and onto the ground. The sight that would make everyone think, how was the boy even alive? Of course, that's not counting the other wounds in his arms, legs, and abdomen respectively. Shit. Just how did that happen? I mean, Drake did tell me about my own power, and the pieces started to fight among each other, but I never thought it would be that violent. He was shocked to say the least. Well, at least I managed to get rid of them, with an exhausted voice the boy said to himself as he tried to stand up, but failed every attempt he made. His body was far too damaged to do something, at least, for now. He sighed while giving up. It seems that I need to stay still until this starts acting up. The boy then gazed at his body. He was being covered with a really difficult to explain substance. The substance was jet black in color with a tiny bit of red, glowing with an eerie purple light at small intervals. It moved as if it had a mind of its own and looked soft to the touch. However, the atmosphere of the substance itself was heavy and made the surrounding area experience a decrease in temperature. This darkness, as he decided to call it, was something he gained that fateful day a few months ago, a Friday if his memory wasn't wrong. According to the information he and Drake managed to figure out, this was the manifestation of his draconian power. When Drake told him that with a voice filled with pride and glee, he made a stupid expression. He didn't really understand what it meant. After the loud laugh of his partner, the dragon calmed himself down and started to explain something he truly was grateful for. According to his explanation, every dragon, whether high or low class, has something that differentiates themselves from other dragons and other species in general. That being, the manifestation of their aura. Not understanding much about it, he asked a dragon to simplify it for him. Knowing that his partner wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed, he explained it with simple words and simple terms. Every dragon has something called aura. You could call it the nucleus of every dragon, their heart, and the source of their powers, so to speak. Once a dragon manages to grow to an extremely old age, or experiences something that manages to change his or her own psyche, then, their aura would change, and they would gain certain characteristics, each one different from other dragons. Those same characteristics would then help the dragon grow at a monstrous pace even among their own kind, and give them a certain advantage over pretty much everyone. Remembering what his experience or experiences were, he did think that he changed from back then. Of course, not for the good. He actually looked awful back then, destroyed from the inside out, and even at the same time his pieces were reacting violently to his own aura, poisoning him to the point he could barely move, making every step a torture in itself. A chill crept up his spine when he remembered exactly what he felt at that time. Something he truly did not wish for anyone, not even for his worst enemy. Shaking his head, he started to focus on his memory of that time, the talk with his partner. He needed to distract himself from the pain his body was experiencing. Remembering the explanation of Drake made the Issei of that time widen his eyes, asking even more about it. He was really curious about it at that time, and for once in a long time, he felt happy. The dragon decided to explain it more easily and reached the conclusion of exemplifying what his words meant. So, he made himself an example. He said that when he reached a certain age he awoke his aura, making him reach the heights of a heavenly dragon, and the so-called characteristic that he gained from his aura was domination. A unique trait in the whole sense of the word. At that time it was also when he gained his first ability related to his aura of dominance. His own flames, capable of burning even gods to less than ash. The blazing inferno of scorching flames was his first ability, but just with this alone he managed to stand tall and proud against any other dragon. Well, until he met a certain white bastard. The brown-haired boy remembered the dragon's voice filled with sentimentalism, something rare in him now that he thought about it. When said white bastard was absolutely resistant to his flames, he felt excited yet scared, as someone just withstood his own flames. The two dragons started to fight against each other, not remembering exactly whether for pride or something else. Since each other were immune to their specialties, they derived other abilities with the help of their aura. He gained the ability to double his own strength and transferred it to other things, and the other dragon created the ability to divide others' strength and add it to his own, completely opposite abilities, all just to counter each other. Later on, in the middle of one of their fights, he managed to ask the white dragon about his trait, answering that it was supremacy. He laughed at it, saying how arrogant that was even among their own kind, but he found this amusing. He then asked for the name of the dragon. Albion Gwyber was the answer he got. Finishing his explanation, he stated that it was of utmost importance to figure out exactly what trait does his aura have. Something that up until this moment hadn't figured out. So aura, well, unexpected, but not unwelcome. After all, I need something for me to become stronger. With a smile filled with viciousness, the boy said to no one in particular. He then turned his hand into a fist, and he stood up with slight difficulty. Looking down onto his body, he stared right at the locations of his wounds, smiling at what was happening. They were being covered in this darkness, blocking the wounds from his view. The darkness gave the impression of a second skin and felt comfortable against his own flesh, like the cool sensation of freshly washed clothes. Then he sensed how his darkness healed the most obvious and painful wounds, closing them at a speed perceivable with the naked eye. Wounds like that, even a single one of them, would take a team of a dozen or so specialized supernatural doctors and over 20 hours of surgery just to patch up. A wound like that closing almost instantaneously, as if it was nothing but a scratch, was ridiculous. If someone could see it, they would be shocked to the point they couldn't say anything. But this, one could see just how abnormal his aura actually was. This was one of the traits of his darkness, extreme regeneration and healing. Although, whether it could truly regenerate a lost limb or not wasn't known, either way, he didn't have the courage to test it. He shook his head to get rid of the dizziness and cracked his neck, feeling the sweet pops of his cervical vertebrae. Well, Drake, time to move on. Time waits for no one, let's make a trip to whatever place is fine, I just really need to clear my head. Nothing like a good old journey to expand my boundaries so that we can finally take our well-deserved break. The boy said as he looked down to his left palm, waiting for the dragon's response. However, he was only answered with silence. With an expression of concern and guilt in his eyes, he bit his own lip. He knew why the dragon hadn't answered him. He had explained it to him before he did this suicidal thing to get rid of the pieces that would have otherwise claimed his life. Sighing, he decided to walk towards the exit, or well, towards the only lit place inside this cavern. Walking toward the sweet light that made him feel butterflies in his stomach, he looked at his surroundings, but cling. A high-pitched sound echoed as his foot accidentally hit something on the stone floor. Turning his head and looking at his feet, he soon found something that made his entire expression change. He was pale, his eyes widened in pure shock. At his feet, a crimson pawn piece the size of a pinky was present. It had a really malicious aura surrounding it, and even some spots on the surface of the piece had turned black. Just by touching it, he felt how his vitality was drained and his whole body started to get exhausted. Bad memories came to his head thanks to that feeling. Gathering his courage, he picked it up like it was something hideous to grab. He had a face filled with disgust and a weary look in his eyes. Well, if I want to start anew, I need to move on from my past. Better put it back in a place where it can be found. Looking down at the piece with hesitance, he decided. Turning back around, he went to look for all the remaining pieces, hoping for the best. A few minutes later, he stared at his own palms. Looking at 8 crimson pawn pieces bathed in a little of his blood, tiny cracks all over their surface. Putting them in the blood-soaked pockets of his pants, he once again looked around the place of his revival. The cave filled with nothing but bloodied, cracked walls, yet a single ray of light shone upon him from a hole in the roof. Before, this was a simple cave, yet now, for him, it signified something completely else, a place he will never forget. Sighing, he made a slight smile at the corner of his lips. Taking his sweet time to remember the scenery in front of him. After a long minute, he turned around and walked away right towards the small light that was behind him. Walking in silence for a few minutes, he finally reached the entrance of the cave. The light of the sun had momentarily blinded him, so he closed his eyes as a mere reflex. Moments later he slowly opened them, just like the ones of a newborn. He then looked at what was in front of him. The forest in who knows where. When he activated the transportation circle, he didn't specify the location, he just wanted to get away from there as fast as he could. Straightening his back and looking resolutely at what was ahead, he walked into the forest. Right now he needed to do a few things before leaving on his journey, and putting the pieces back into his house was only the first step. Because he didn't want for someone to track him, well, not that they would know that he was gone in the first place, he decided to do something back at home. He recalled the words he heard that night from a certain number of maidens. Those words were truly what had finally broke him. Even now, when he remembered them, it still hurt a lot. Even though he no longer had the emotions and feelings he had, bad memories were still bad, and that scene had tormented his mind till this very day. However, he vowed that today was the last of those nightmares. Of those disgusting night terrors that made him scared of just sleeping. Shaking his head, he got rid of those memories. Well, let's start this, shall we? This will certainly be interesting. I wonder what exactly will happen from now on. With a confident tone of voice that sounded sharp and cold, he walked onwards, light shining from within his eyes. Soon they changed color, from their normal golden tone, they turned jet black with a red tinge at the center of the iris. At the same time, a mark started to appear on his forehead, the same color as his own darkness. This being the demon mark, a simple side effect when using his aura, something simple that wasn't dangerous at all. The mark started at the left side of his forehead, in the shape of a spiral, that circled itself 2 times ending upwards, and towards the left, almost reaching the root of his hair. On the right side of the spiral, there were 3 spikes joined one amongst the other pointing upwards in a diagonal way. At the bottom part of the spiral, on the same side it ended upwards, a long yet thin spike reached all the way down, ending right above the eyebrow. At this moment he subconsciously released an aura that made the entire place within a 10 kilometers radius tremble. Every living being in that radius started running away, and even the leaves on the trees started to move and rustle. Light itself started to fade little by little, and coldness replaced the warm feeling the forest had. The aura inside that place was suffocating. Even a high-class devil will find itself with the difficulty to breathe, much less move. The aura was simply that menacing and heavy. Definitely something you wouldn't want to be aimed at. Walking onwards, he reached the center of the forest. He then started to set up the transportation circle back to Kuo. He looked at his surroundings filled with beautiful tall trees and wet grass, with a few patches of moss here and there. While walking, he remembered all the events in his life up until now, especially those after the war with Klepeth and Trihexa. He remembered the final battle and how, after a conjoined effort of all the gods and beings with that level of strength, they barely managed to seal the beast in an especially modified dimension. After that, many deities went into hibernation, using all of their power truly made them weak. So many gods that before were actually active now were resting. Few deities actually still roamed the world, that included the devils, the angels, and the fallen angels. With his head occupied by his thoughts, he started to think about his future. He wanted to do something about it, but for now, things still needed to be done back at home. Luckily for him, there weren't that many. Soon after, the transportation circle was finished. Looking uncomfortably at the red and black magic circle, he gathered courage and moved. Standing at the center of it, he activated it. At the same moment he removed the effect that his darkness had on his body. His eyes turned back to yellow, and the mark on his forehead was also gone. He didn't want to become a beacon for other beings back at Kuo. He also didn't want them to start asking questions, so he decided to suppress his aura to that of a normal human. This way no one will suspect anything, an arduous task, but with good results nonetheless. Sighing, light started to gather at his surroundings. Seems like I will need time to get accustomed to my body. It still feels wobbly. He awkwardly moved his arms. Drake also needs time to regain his consciousness. Well, during this time period there are a few things that do not need special force, so better start with them. Light covered his field and his vision. However, before he left, he muttered under his breath with a sharp and cold voice. The new Issei has been born. Now world, let's see what you got for me. With a depredatory smile he arrogantly said. Soon after he vanished from the forest, his next destination, Kuo, his home. End prologue. Inside a huge bedroom with a king-size bed, at the centermost part of the room, right against the wall, lay a brown-haired boy. The light that escaped in between his curtains disturbed his sleep, or like he liked to say, his nightmares. Slowly awakening from his dreams he looked at both of his sides. This again, he said that to himself with a tired voice. He stood up from his bed, stretching his numb limbs. Now that I think about it, this room is far too big for a single person. Turning around and looking into his bed, he found nothing. Yes, absolutely nothing. No one was here, something that at the beginning surprised him, but now, it no longer did. Making his bed in an orderly way, he decided to get into the shower. Right now he didn't want to train, he wasn't in the mood, again. Before going into the bath, he walked to the left of his bedroom and looked straight towards a dark-colored wooden door. Gathering the courage he had left, he opened it. Creak. Another room laid before him, the sweet smell of a woman still fresh inside, yet no one could be seen. This room was no other than Ria's Gremory's room. Big and filled with high-class furniture and a lot of expensive ornaments. An elegant chandelier hung from the ceiling, the walls were painted in an extravagant pinkish red, and there was even a huge carpet on the floor, with the Gremory sigil embedded onto it. Even though the bed had its own curtain, he believed those types of beds were named canopy beds. It smelled sweet, like strawberries, and the bright sunlight illuminated the room, so everything inside could be perfectly seen. Yet the woman he loved was nowhere in sight, not a shadow of her figure was seen. Closing the door to the room, he sighed. Not here again, how odd. With a tone filled with sarcasm he said to himself. Anger is clearly present in those words. Entering his own bathroom, he went towards the shower. He slowly turned on the hot water while leaning forward, letting both hands rest on the wall. He was completely alone, but when one is left alone with his thoughts, one is going to wander around them. He remembered how much time passed since the campaign of the evil dragons, since the sealing of Trihexa, and the death of Rizavum Live and Lucifer. 3 months flew by, yet the damage was done by him, and the beast still wasn't the least bit repaired. Even a few extremist groups were formed to strike against the current government of the supernatural. Well, the good news was that the human world did not know about it, the majority of it anyway. Something that big it's just impossible to cover up. This information was mentioned by the former governor of the fallen angels, Azazel. But because of the incapacity of the so-called superiors, like the former governor said, all the upper echelons decided to just inform them yet ask them to not intervene. They had done far too much, and now it was their turn to do something. So the school life of all the Gremory and Citri groups started again. Now being in their last year before college. Now was the time to prepare and find a career, but for the brown-haired boy, this was the least of his concerns. Getting out of the shower and turning off the hot water, he went to the bathtub to relax. Sitting inside it, he let the warm water and the odor of some bath salts do their magic. His tense muscles seemed to relax a bit. But even with those things trying to relax him, one could notice, just by looking at him, that he was in pretty bad shape. Even the people that didn't know him much would be able to tell that something happened to him, something bad. His former buffed appearance was now mostly gone. His tanned healthy skin turned into a sickly, pale white. His eyes lacked the luster the former had, now resembling the ones of a corpse. Big eye bags adorned his face, big enough for one to notice the many sleepless nights. If one looked closely enough, one would find, in different parts of his body, weird black spots. They were perfectly round and similar to gangrene, but they looked different. These spots were 8 swirling, pulsing, black circles, and just by looking at them one could imagine how painful they were. Amongst them, the worst of all were definitely the ones at his chest, being bigger, darker, and much more ominous. Especially the one located at his heart, that one seemed much darker, deeper, and eviler. Well, at least that's what Issei thought. Touching the one located just below his heart, he said. I don't understand what I did to deserve this. Was it because I am a pervert? Or rather, just like they said, was I just a nuisance? A dumb boy that is not worth anything? Talking to himself with a sad tone, he stopped touching his heart below the black spot. He remembered how he got these holes. This corruption that destroyed his body, the more he remembered them. Lost in his thoughts, he remembered how they forgot about him, and at the moment he went to look for them. What an awful surprise. While the black spots pulsed, making him feel scorching pain, he recalled his worst memory. Second flashback. 2 months flew by after the war. Now the students of the 3rd year of Kuo Academy graduated and went to Kuo College Division. Among them, Ria's Gremory, Himejima Akeno, Sona Citri, and Tsubaki Shinra. Now the 4 great One-Isamas were out of the school and inside college. In the beginning he was extremely happy for them. After all, how could one not be happy when your loved one graduated? The orc was still there, but it was different without Ria's and Akeno. It was more work-centered, and the student council was so busy that the time they had to spend with everyone was almost nothing. Issei was now walking towards a huge edification covered with plants, flowers, moss, and with a few parts of it falling down to the ground. For all, that building gave a really creepy vibe. The road he was walking on was broken, and some roots of the older trees were seen in an entangled mess all over the surface of it. He walked slowly, with his hands in his pockets, and looking at the ground, thinking who knows what, but before he could continue with his thoughts, he was abruptly stopped by the voice of a good friend of his, a certain blonde knight. "Hey, Issei kun." A blonde-haired boy talked to him with his usual pretty boy smile, walking towards him. "You okay? You seem distracted." The blonde commented. "Nah, don't worry about it. Just thinking that we have been seeing ourselves less and less these days, since Rias and Akeno-san graduated." Taken by surprise by the comment of the brown-haired boy, the knight flinched. Yeah, but he nodded his head. "Now because of college we see each other less, and because of the club activities and the unusual amount of contracts we have to do, things do seem like that." With a sad smile he answered. Both of them talked as they walked closer to the orc building. Soon they went past a big broken creepy wooden door used to enter the building and towards the end of the left corridor. Only seeing a double wooden door at the end of their path. Creak. Opening the double door they saw a staircase in front. Soon after, they started walking up a stairs, grabbing the rusty railing that left a metal scent on their hands. Reaching the second floor they went to the second door to the right and opened it. Inside the big old-looking room were the members of the orc. Looking further in, the brown-haired boy saw two people he did not expect to see. "Rias Akeno-san," he thought. The room they were in was rather odd, the ceiling was really tall, and in all four walls bookcases filled his view. On these bookcases some strange sigils were written on their surfaces, all in a strange language he recognized as devil letters. That touch gave a rather uncomfortable vibe to the whole room. At the far end, towards his left, one could see a black desk with a black leather chair. 4 couches red in color were accommodated at the center of the room, now filled with people. Seeing the 2 women sitting on one of the couches he was faster than the knight for once. Even speaking with a cheerful voice. "Rias. Akeno-san." The 2 women hurriedly turned and looked at the boy. Yet something in their eyes scared him, he did not know what, but something seemed different from the way they used to look at him. "Well, hello Ice." With a neutral and even emotionless tone of voice, the red-haired woman talked to him. Issei was taken by surprise by her tone, being more direct and even a bit cold. "Ice-kun, it's nice to see you again. It has been a while." Yet the answer of Yamato Nadeshiko froze him up. Nothing seemingly wrong with her words, yet he could detect she was different, at least towards him. In the past she would have run towards him and hugged him, but now she did nothing. Even the smile she had was forced as if she talked to someone that she didn't care for. The blonde knight on his left also detected something odd, but quickly composed himself. Taking a look towards his friend he saw him standing there, not moving, not even blinking. Quickly acting up before something happened, he spoke. "Rias-sama. How have you been? It's been more than a month since we last saw you." The knight calmly asked in a too professional tone. But Rias didn't perceive the tone used by said knight. "Yes, Udo. College has kept us quite busy, so I apologize for that, but since today we had a free day we decided to come by and check how things are going." "Right, Akeno," she answered. Meanwhile, Issei came back to himself and was about to speak up but was stopped by the answer of Akeno. "Yes. We had free time and wanted to check on all of you, especially Anasia since she is the new president, but by the looks of it, she has been doing well." "Yes, Akeno Wani-sama, Rias Wani-sama. All of us have been quite well, thanks for asking." The blonde-haired woman answered in a cheerful voice while smiling. Kiba and Issei realized how she didn't notice how they were acting towards Issei. Actually, for Kiba, it seemed as if she decided to ignore what happened, something that was weird coming from her. Taking the word, Kaneko spoke. "Rias-sama, Akeno-senpai, we've been well. Even my sister has been well thanks to Yasaka-sama, talking to her about a possible job. Being an ambassador of the Imkai." Completely changing the subject of the talk, Kaneko talked about her sister. The blonde-haired boy became suspicious, it seemed as if something happened to all women lives and were trying to hide it from the male. Even Zenobia and Irina, that would normally talk among themselves, were quiet. Odd, quite odd. "Oh? So something like that happened to Kuroka-sama. I'm happy for her." Smoothly replying, Ravel talked from the couch at the left of Kaneko. A certain brown-haired boy walked closer to them, his bangs covering his eyes, obscuring them. "Is that all you are for? To check?" With a cold tone, he almost screamed. Then he widened his eyes, he realized that his words were cold, so he hurriedly began talking with a soft and warm voice. "Would you not want to talk more? Tell us about your college life. Anything at all. We have time, after all, it's Friday. Tomorrow there is no school for both of us, so why not take this time to catch up?" Knowing about his mistake of talking like that, he asked with a goofy smile on his face. Kiba released a sigh of relief, but what came next surprised him as much as it was possible. With a clearly strict and cold tone, Riaz spoke. Yes, we only came for that ice. Her voice sharpened. We are very busy, and later today we have a meeting with our class to check on some projects we need to do. We also came to tell all of you a couple of things. Dismissing the comment of ice, the red-haired stated. Bakeno then spoke up. We came only to say that in the near future we won't be able to spend much time among ourselves. After all, right now college is quite tough, and being the future president and vice president of our faculty only makes it tougher. Zor Senpai has been kind enough to guide us so that we can take up their positions well enough. Bakeno spoke up towards no one in particular, but Issei knew it was towards him. Even the mention of that senpai was slightly different from the rest of her words, being flirty and sexual. Call it the gut feeling of Issei. Udo. Riaz turned around and looked straight at her knight. We also came to tell you that because of recent events our contracts have been increasing, but because there is only so much we can do, and since Issei is the worst of the worst at it, I need you to take a few more contracts in his place. Kiba was with a face filled with shock. Don't worry, there won't be that many so that it affects your studies, be at ease. Riaz said as he looked at him. Kiba, on the other hand, didn't expect her to just insult Issei like that. Those words were something he never thought would come out of her. Completely out of breath at the sudden insult towards his best friend, he did not have the words to answer back. I'll take your silence as an answer. Now, excuse us, but we need to leave. The two of them stood up and walked towards the exit, passing by Issei and not even looking at him. One could see the boy tremble in disbelief, but he just stood there, not saying anything. A couple of minutes passed, and the only ones left were Kiba and Issei. The former worried about the latter and surprised about how things turned out. He was even more shocked about how the rest of the girls did nothing, not even looking at him. Like they didn't know him, as if he wasn't worth anything in their eyes. Waiting for Issei to come back to himself, he thought about the new order his master gave him. Annoying it was, it seemed that he would need to make adjustments to his schedule. Training will be completely left out, at least for now, until he completes the new contracts he will get instead of Issei. Issei woke up from his stupor. Seeing no one except Kiba in the room, he tightly wrapped his left hand into a fist. Drip drip. Blood came from his hand, slowly painting the wooden floor with a few red drops. Really only that 2 months without seeing each other, and that's what you say, with a tone filled with sadness, melancholy, anger and fury, the brown-haired spat. What happened? Why has everyone around me changed so goddamn much? He screamed from in between his teeth. Also getting a headache at the mention of the Holy One. Smash. He punched the wall and made a hole in it. It wasn't that deep, but it still proved how angry he actually was. Kiba could see how his friend was suffering, it did not surprise him. After all, 2 whole months without speaking to any of them, as if they were someone else, and when he did try to go talk to any of them they would answer with an I'm busy, don't bother me now, get out pervert. Sorry, but maybe next time, so he wasn't surprised by his sudden explosion. One could guess just how bad his mental state was. He was quieter and less open than before, proof that this did serious damage to him, and even his physical appearance seemed different. But what could he do? He tried talking with him, but Issei just avoided the topic completely. Only by sparring did Issei get all those thoughts out of his head, and now, there won't be time even for that. Kiba felt useless, truly useless. What a friend he was, Kiba knew that speaking with someone else wouldn't cut it, and the rest of the group were always doing other things. Asper was in the hospital with Valerie, waiting for her recovery. Azazel-sensei was always in Grigori because of recent past events. The girls, well, you can answer that one. The student council was far too busy with the school and with the project of their king. Surzicha-sama, Grafia-sama, Michael-san, Bali, were all busy. Either with political treaties, damage repair, fixing their own territory, or with missions to help the cause against those rebelling groups. Raswa-sensei was called back by the Norse pantheon because of something Aden-sama asked her to help with. They heard from her that it was related to the barrier trapping the Trihexa and that she didn't even know when she would come back. She only left after saying goodbye to Issei, and after that contact was lost, no one could reach her. They assumed that, because the work was far too important to let distractions in, no contact was allowed. So in the end there was no one, nothing could be done. Issei turned around as fast as he could, kicking the door open and saying to himself. I need to go where they are. I need answers from them, and that little speech won't cut it. As a soul that ran out of hell, Issei was gone, leaving Kiba alone in the room. 20 minutes later. Issei ran as fast as he could. His destination, Kuo College Division. However, he heard a voice inside of his head. Partner? What happened? Why are you running? Are you being chased by the girls of your school? Again Drake talked to him mentally, tiredness present in his voice. Issei stopped running and looked at his left hand, more specifically the reverse of his palm. The green circle shining in a dull green light was right on the reverse of his palm. Drake. He was happy. Partner, is good to hear from you. I did not hear from you the entire day, but the conversation needs to be postponed. Right now, I have something I need to do. Surprised by the severity in the tone of voice of his partner, Drake understood. Something must be or will go wrong. Okay partner. He agreed with him. But I will stay awake for now to see what exactly happened. Whatever you need, just talk, I'll be there. Drake solemnly answered. Thanks Paul. I'll explain things to you as soon as I am done. Continuing his run, Issei decided to take a shortcut through the park. Maybe that way he can catch up to them. Running like he just stole something, he swiftly went through the park and after a couple of minutes of running, he finally saw the orc a few meters up ahead. He watched how the girls said their goodbyes to Rias and Akeno, something he found odd. When did they start to accompany them? Why did they do it? Simple courtesy or something else? Maybe they have something to do here. Shaking his head he left those thoughts for another time. Issei then followed Rias and Akeno inside their college. Drake was quiet, but he was thinking the same as his partner. Being a millennia-old dragon he knew something was off. Experience is the greatest teacher, and right now he feels something bad will happen to his partner, something really bad. Before Issei, a big metal gate made its appearance as the entrance door, having a rather rusty and broken look to it. Walls of bricks were at either side of the gate all covered in moss, symbolizing that they were old. Looking beyond the gate one could see a big building in the furthermost part of the complex, and alongside it, many smaller buildings which could be the other fraternities of the college were present. However, not a single student was outside, and thanks to that getting in was quite easy, no problem at all. Walking past the gate, he looked at the backs of the two women he was looking for, but instead of running as fast as he could towards them, he decided to follow them. Something about them felt weird. Continuing his chase, the two women expertly crossed the campus. Said campus being a full patch of dirt and grass with a few statues of what he guessed to be the founder of the college and other important teachers. A lot of trees adorned the path he was walking on, he could identify some as rosewood trees thanks to their purplish flowers. Many other trees were alongside them, but he was no expert, so he couldn't decipher what species of trees they were. The smell was of freshly cut grass and wet dirt, something he expected about such a big campus. The buildings were styled like the ones in old British movies. They were similar to images he had seen of Oxford when he was looking for universities in his free time. Maybe the founder got inspired by British architecture. Who knows? Being late, around 5 p.m. on a Friday, the students were gone. Just a minority were left for whatever reason they must have. Walking towards the building he saw at the entrance, the pair of women continued their walk while talking among themselves. It appeared they did not notice someone was following them, a lack of awareness on their part. Soon, they finally entered the main building that seemed to be their faculty. They crossed the main door of the faculty and walked towards a huge staircase that covered almost all the rooms they were in. At both sides of the floor above them, balconies adorned the halls making it seem refined and high class. Reaching the end of the stairs they made a last left turn and at the very bottom of the hallway, one could see a double door with a sign above it. It read as student faculty in bright gold letters and encased in a wooden framework with intricate details. Clearly, someone spent some money on it. Issei, still being at the end stairs, peeked his head out and saw how Rias knocked on the door. Seconds later, a man made his appearance. He was tall, around 6 foot something, appearing to be in his early 20s. His physique was quite big, so he did some kind of sport. Issei's fighting experience kicking in made him guess martial arts. He had shoulder-length blonde hair and blue eyes as clear as the sky, but something within them made Issei uncomfortable. Not that he was strong, but more like he was a threat to him. Reaching that conclusion he continued watching the man as he talked to Rias and Akeno. Soon after some talk, the man invited them in. Partner, something is not right. Something is just odd, Drake finally talked with hidden worry in his voice. Partner, I feel something terrible will happen to you. You should leave. Surprised at the sudden words of his partner, he widened his eyes and mentally answered. Drake, what are you talking about? Nothing will happen. Although looking like that guy is weak, pitifully so. Maybe around low-class devil, if not lower. Issei answered in his mind, but he had to agree he did feel threatened, but for a completely different reason he did not yet understand. I know partner, his tone exasperated. But something about that guy makes me feel uneasy. It's as if he will leave you so terribly wounded you might not be able to do anything else in your life. His words were serious. Just hear me out, and let's go away. You can ask them at another time, or maybe even the other girls, Drake stated, worry present in his voice, but his partner was just too stubborn. The FFT. Come on Drake. He told the dragon. Just a quick peek inside. I will hear what they want to talk about and after that, we'll leave. Then I'll wait for them at the entrance of the school. The boy stubbornly answered, but deep inside he had fear. Quick, before the door closes. Wait. Partner, don't cutting the communication with the dragon. Even cutting him mid-speech, he sprinted towards the door. Promoting tonight, he ran towards the door just before it closed. Sticking his finger in before it closed, he made a gap big enough for him to see without someone inside noticing him. Quickly thanking his extremely good eyesight, he looked inside. An extremely luxurious room stood before him. Pine leather couches laid on its center. One big enough to fit 3 people and still have room to spare. On each side of the biggest couch, there were 2 smaller ones, fitting for a single person. In front of it, a normal dark wooden table with 3 teacups filled with recently poured tea. Further in, right against the wall, there were bookcases. The sheer number of books was enough to fill the entire wall, and in front of them, there was a big leather chair with an accompanying desk the same tone as the wooden table. The ceiling had a fancy chandelier, while tall lamps with ornaments adorned the corners of the room. But it wasn't the room that took the air out of his lungs, it wasn't the furniture, no. It was the ones inside said room. That image took the entire life out of him. Sitting on the biggest couch in the room were the 2 women he was looking for, but both of them were leaning their entire weight upon the man he saw before, with a blush on his cheeks and a stupid smile on his face. Both women were wrapping themselves around him like a snake about to eat their prey. Their eyes were filled with happiness and enjoyment. The kind of happiness he had seen when he made Akeno reconcile with her father and when he declared his love to Rias in the orc. The dragon inside the boosted gear went wide-eyed at the scene, hoping his eyes went bad due to old age. He even went to the extremes of asking the dead god of the Bible for his eyesight to be wrong. Quickly checking how his partner was, he managed to figure out something about him. Disbelief appeared in his eyes. He could not find anything. Not even the slightest fragment of emotion could be seen nor felt. It's as if his brain and body just shut down, placing his entire attention to the scene in front of his eyes. He also could not enter the mind realm of his partner, but guessing by the information obtained so far, the situation was not good. Wishing to check again, he tried once more, but nothing happened. He repeated the process over and over again, but only finding the same to happen. Leaving that aside, he decided to monitor his partner's body. A chill ran up his spine when he noticed how his body was currently. Just how could that happen? Drake quickly screamed, but it seemed Issei was not capable of hearing him. Those things gave him his power. Damn. They even gave him back his life in the beginning. How could such a vicious reaction occur in his body? Drake quickly said to himself, surprised and even a little bit scared by the horrendous reaction happening inside his partner's body. It's because of them. How could something like this happen? Because of those women? Anger filled the Red Dragon Emperor. His voice was full of venom as he spat his conclusion. He was furious. Those disgusting women were actually doing something horrible to their partner. Partner? Leave, but before he could tell his partner to stop watching and to leave this place immediately, a voice interrupted his thoughts. Said voice was of the man sitting on the couch. Right in between the pair of women. Scene change inside the room. Rias, Akeno. I know you both like me, but please, not here. We need to check some papers as well as pass them to our professors. The man talked as he blushed. We can do this tomorrow. After all, I promised to go on a date with both of you. The man said towards the 2 women at both sides of him, pride filled his voice, and a smile adorned his face. How could he not be like that? 2 of the most beautiful women he ever laid eyes upon were fighting for him. Answering his question, Akeno spoke up in a flirty voice. Akeno hummed seductively. What are you talking about, Ryuji? You want this as much as we wanted. So, let's take break. Akeno muttered the last words with a sensual voice that made the now named Ryuji blush even more. Gathering courage, Ryuji decided to go for it, but before something could happen, an angry voice was heard right behind him. He listened to the furious voice of the other woman by his side. Akeno. What do you think you're doing, trying to seduce him in front of me? Angrily, Rias stepped in before he could try something. Feeling scared of her, he did not do a thing, he just sat there, not moving a muscle. Then she said with a voice filled with sexuality. I will show you who is the best among us, Ryuji. The woman started to move. She was slowly showing her well-endowed curves, making Ryuji swallow his spit. But before he managed to achieve her goal, a voice was heard, said voice being Akeno. Rias. Trying to get on him without me? Sorry, but I will not let you. Throwing herself at him, she stopped the advances of the red-haired. He fell onto the couch, Akeno on top of him in a really easy to misunderstand position. Rias, so as not to fall onto the ground, quickly stood up. On seeing the image in front of her, she was filled with anger and fury. Akeno, if you do not stop now, I will have to get him off you by force. You know I love him. So why do you always want the same thing as I do? With a nice smile on her face, Rias screamed, anger clearly visible in her eyes. Her emotion slowly changed her eyes into a red color. Ryuji felt a chill run up his spine and started to sweat bullets, but Akeno didn't even hesitate. What do you mean by saying that I want him just because you love him? He was the first guy I met who didn't have a disgusting look in his eyes. He did not look at me like a piece of meat, really kind as well. Just look at him, he is manly, good looking, and doesn't look at me like a piece of trash would do. How could I not fall for him? With a serious tone of voice, the black-haired woman spoke up. Not knowing how impactful her words were in the good sense and the bad sense. Rias felt her blood boil at those words, but she knew she was right. That was also one of the many reasons why she fell in love with Ryuji. Calming herself down, she looked at them clear-headed. Something that surprised the both in front of her. She let out a long breath of air, trying to calm herself down before she did something stupid. Once relaxed, she looked at both of them, especially at Akeno, and said with a resolute voice, "But for our brown-haired boy," it sounded sharp, merciless, and dug straight into his heart. "True, the fact that he isn't a pervert or drools over merely our side is truly a blessing." Her voice is calm and sharp. "Much better than any man I had ever met, that's for sure," she asserted. "It's also true that he is manly, decisive, and kind. These are also few of the reasons I love him, but first and foremost is the fact that he is not dumb, naive, pervert like someone Akeno, and I know." Akeno furrowed her brows at the remembrance of that man. Certainly compared to anyone else, especially to him, he truly is above in all aspects. Especially in the looks department. Akeno's voice was flirty at the end. "I have to concur that him not being a dumb pervert or a maniac obsessed with breasts is the greatest blessing we could have." Finishing the comment of Rias, Akeno spoke with a cold voice. Unknowingly how much damage had her words done to someone. Also, it's nice for him to understand our intentions and not to explain them with a big sign over our heads. "I'm glad you figured them out, Ryuji. Truly something I want in the future for the man I love," Rias told him. "Well, let's keep going. I need a kiss if you want me to do the work. It's quite late and the work needs to be done. Kiss me, Ryuji." Putting her lips forward, she begged for the kiss. Answering her, he stood up from the couch and walked towards the red-haired beauty. Leaving a pouty Akeno on the couch. Kiss. Quickly stealing her lips, he kissed Rias. The sound of lips connecting was the only thing that could be heard, but that scene was something that was burned into the mind of our spectator. That scene of Rias kissing that man made the brown-haired boy empty. He truly didn't understand why. Was it because of the words both of them had said about him? Was it truly because he was a fool, a pervert, naive, and dumb? His thought stopped when he looked back to the scene of the kiss, but this time with eyes devoid of any light, like those of a corpse. The kiss quickly became more intoxicating. Tongues started to fight a battle for dominance. After a while, the woman broke the kiss. She was in need of air, but she felt that compared to someone he wasn't that good of a kisser. Getting rid of the thought, she quickly looked over to him. Only to be taken by surprise when Akeno jumped towards him and kissed him even more fervently. Kiss. She was more daring than Rias, of that he was sure. Quickly breaking the kiss, Akeno said. "Really quite the charmer, aren't you, Ryuji? To make Rias ask for a kiss is quite impressive, but I will show you who is the best kisser among us two." She leaned forward, she was searching for his lips. Kiss. She kissed him for the third time, but she felt something was missing from the kiss. However, the kiss became more passionate. Being a sadist, she took control of the battlefield really fast, but she decided to break it before the red-haired got jealous and tried something that will make her feel even more competitive. Ryuji felt extremely good. He just kissed two beauties. Two of the most beautiful women he had ever seen in his life. He turned towards the clock sitting at his desk, 5:30 p.m. The time they spent talking and kissing was too much. Now they only had 30 minutes before their deadline. Sprinting towards his desk, he decided to start working as fast as he could. Noticing that, Akeno and Rias also looked at the clock and quickly started to fill papers in. Thinking of a certain boy, but erasing the thought. They concentrated on the task before the deadline arrived. Scene change outside the student faculty. Staying outside the room, Issei was on his knees, recapitulating the words said inside that room. He felt empty, completely empty. Just remembering those words made him sad, angered, and completely broken overall. The scene of the kiss between Ryuji and Rias was like a sharp knife, twisting and turning inside his heart. He felt his body go weak, his vision was clouded with unsheathed tears, his sense of balance gone. Standing up with whatever strength he had left, he walked away from that place. Walking down the stairs, grabbing the metal railing. He walked slowly, painfully slowly until he reached the last step of the staircase. Reaching the bottom of the staircase. He looked back up, tears threatened to come out of his eyes, but they didn't. Soon, he lost control of his body and fell down to his knees. He felt dizzy and started to hyperventilate. Pant, pant, pant. Sweat formed throughout his body. His head spinning and his body trembling as if he had spasms. That scene, those words, just wouldn't go away. They kept repeating inside his head, over and over again. But suddenly he heard a voice inside his head. Tner. Partner, the dragon roared inside his head. Getting him out of those thoughts. Grateful towards the dragon, he wanted to talk to him, but words did not leave his mouth. He heard Drake's voice again. Partner, answer me. Shit, Issei, answer me. Show me that you can listen to me. Move your left hand up. Slowly, Issei moved his hand up. That made the dragon happy. His partner finally heard him. Partner, hear me out. Get away from here as fast as possible. Your body is not right. The dragon was anxious. The evil pieces are acting strangely, I can no longer control them. Your power as a dragon is also reacting violently towards the energy released from the pawn pieces. We need to leave, quickly find somewhere peaceful and quiet. Understanding that the words of his partner were right, Issei slowly stood up. Suddenly losing his balance, he went towards the wall to have some sort of support. His head became clear after what he felt as an eternity. Shit. My body does not respond to me. I'm feeling extremely hot and sweaty, even my chest hurts a lot. What exactly happened? Getting him out of his thoughts, Drake answered his question. Partner, it's the evil pieces. They are acting strange. You can no longer control them, and they are releasing a terrible aura that is clashing with your draconic power. The heat and the pain are proof of that. We need to leave quickly. Using magic or even the boosted gear in this state will probably kill you. So start moving, commented the dragon with a serious voice. Issei made haste and started to move his body. With every step he felt as if his muscles were ripped apart, as if his tendons were torn, and as if his bones were twisted. He felt every single part of his body burn, as if he was just thrown into the burning pits of hell. Each step was a challenge, the heat he felt became more annoying. Sweat started to accumulate, dropping visibly down his cheek towards the chin and down to the ground, but he moved. He had only one goal, and that was to get out of here as soon as possible. Making the greatest effort he ever made in his entire life, he reached the door of the building. He pushed it open while the hinges of the door made a loud noise. Soon, after pushing the entire door open, he saw beautiful scenery. The green grass was now painted with an orange tinge because of the sunset, and the statues were shining brightly because of the sunlight. The smell of freshly cut grass was still there, but now it had a tinge of rosewood that was thanks to the trees that were rooted in some places of the campus. He could hear the wind howling and the leaves rustling. A beautiful sight indeed if he did not feel like shit. Walking away from the building, towards the center of the campus passing by the statues and the other faculties, he heard Drake's voice filled with encouragement. Come on partner. You can do it. After the gate there is the park you ran through when you first came. Let's go there. Your house is too far away to even try to go at it in your current state. Once in the park, I'll tell you about your body. Well, as far as I know. Walking past the metal gate, he saw the park. It stood like the most beautiful painting he had ever seen. The dirt road was clearly marked on the ground, and further in, it separated into many different paths, going to different places. Many trees stood proudly at what he thought to be the gate. Because there was nothing, aside from the brick walls surrounding the man-made park, he thought those huge trees pointed at the entrance of the park. Balls taller than most cars surrounded the park, showing that the entire block was a part of it. Walking as fast as he could he went inwards, trying to find a bench to rest his body. Walking by different plants, flowers, trees, and even a few animals he saw here and there, he chose the right path of the dirt road that signaled him to go further in. Not knowing what was expecting him, he moved his tired body until he saw a big fountain. After what he felt like an eternity, he saw his savior. Like the most beautiful women he had ever seen. Like when he first obtained the balance breaker. Like when he defeated Apophis. The bench was firmly planted on the ground near that fountain, waiting for him to sit on it to finally rest. Reaching the bench he noticed a bush behind it. It was big enough to cover the body of an entire person. Taking a look behind it to check if something was behind it, he sat on the bench just some mindless paranoia. Releasing a very heavy sigh, he laid down on the bench, wiping the sweat off his face with his shirt. Trying to gain his breath back, he noticed that the pain he felt earlier was now subsiding. Something he was extremely grateful for. Turning his eyes to the fountain in front, he saw the beauty of the park. Birds were chirping and flying in the sky, landing on the branches of the multiple trees that were rooted on the ground. With the help of the wind, the trees and its leaves were moving peacefully from one way to the other, and nothing except the sound of leaves falling to the ground, as well as the sound of the animals was heard. Not a single human voice or car engine was heard. Really a peaceful moment in all this chaos he just experienced. Finally, after his moment of courage, he started to break down. Tears fell down his face. Blood was coming off of his hands because of his nails digging in his skin. He felt the flavor of iron in his mouth, and soon he started to cough. Cough. He even spitted a mouthful of blood. Why, just what did I do? Why do I deserve this? He started to mentally break down. Was it because I'm a pervert? A fool and naive being? Was it because I was kind to others? Alright, stop right there. The dragon quickly made its appearance. Do not think like that. I do not know why they did it, but I know it wasn't because you were kind. So don't think like that, Drake told him. He hated how his possessor and friend ended up like this. He wanted to help him, but he couldn't do much. Just support him. Drake, why do you say that you also heard them? You also saw them. So please tell me why. He wanted answers. Why are they doing that with it at that fucker? Furious, Issei asked Drake. I don't know why they did what they did, but I do know that it wasn't because you were kind. He explained. Sure, you're dumb and a pervert, but that can be fixed. No one was born knowing everything, no one was born perfect. He told his partner with a serious tone. About your pervertedness, you can control and dominate it. If you are not manly, then buff up. If you're not handsome, then change your style until you find yourself good looking. His voice was filled with pride, the pride of a dragon. Everyone has an opinion. To some people you may be like that, but to others, the ones that truly care for you, you're completely different. Don't let their words reach you. Prove them wrong with your actions, show them what you truly are. A dragon. He roared those last words. The motivational words spoken from Drake truly did reach him, his crying stopped. Swallowing the blood in his mouth, he looked up to the dark sky. Seeing the clouds slowly move further and further away, he sat there on his bench for a while until the sun set down. The moon rose up, changing the color of the sky to a slightly darker blue. After all this time spent thinking, he found out that the words of Drake were right. Even if they went with other people, to another man, he still had others. Girls that truly loved him. Even though it hurt him far too much to accept it. After all, if you give up on life, then life will give up on you. You will only sink further and further inside the mud. Thanks, Drake. I really needed that. He told his friend. You're right, even if they think like that. So what? I still have others that do not think like them. It's impossible for everyone around me to think as they do. He finally regained his confidence. The dragon could hear his voice, now it sounded better. But before saying anything, he felt some strong auras near them. Quickly, partner, hide. I feel multiple strong presences coming towards this place. In your actual state you are no match for any of them. I'll help you in hiding your aura. Now that you are in this weak state, it will be much easier hiding you from others, even if they are stronger than you. Flinching at the comment of the dragon, he hid behind his bench in the bush he earlier inspected. Slowly, but surely, he heard voices. It was kind of late, around 8 p.m., so finding someone at this time in the park was rather odd. Hearing the voices closing in, he recognized them, but the topic of their conversation was something that made him vomit blood behind the bush. Blarg. Thankfully they didn't hear him. Hey Asya, what do you think of these? Quite beautiful, right? The boy I like gifted them to me. Beautiful, aren't they? That voice was of Irina Shidu, the childhood friend of Issei. She was happily jumping around with over 100 roses on her hands, carefully ordered in a couple of bouquets. Answering instead of Asya, Zenobia talked. Why do you feel so prideful? Isn't that a sin? You'll fall, you know, Irina. Besides, he gifted them to you so that you could agree to become his girlfriend. Zenobia quickly countered Irina. True, but Ryudro is so sweet, nice, and gentlemanly. Besides, he always spends time with me, I love him. Her voice sounded sweet and dreamy. The blush was on her cheeks. She was bringing both hands towards her face, trying to cover her blush. Looking at her, Asya said. Irina-san, Zenobia-san. It's true that the gifts were beautiful, but still I do not think you should keep saying it. Both of you have boyfriends, and I believe that if Ryudro-san and Saoji-san were to hear you they would start fighting. Shyly talking, Asya gave her own advice. Ah! Both of them screamed at the same time. They realized that her words were true. Even though they are brothers, they are extremely competitive towards each other. Last time they barely stopped them. Changing the subject of the talk, Zenobia quickly teased Asya. Oh. So Asya, what about Ken? You two have been quite lovey-dovey recently. Doesn't he help you with the club work? Also, there's a rumor that says that the two of you were holding hands and even kissing. So is it true? Skillfully, Zenobia asked Asya. Betting the constant nods of an excited Irina. Well, just she made a mess thanks to that comment. Yes, those rumors are actually true. Asya answered with honesty despite a red face. Suddenly the fourth figure accompanying them spoke up. Asya senpai daring. She was a short white-haired girl, she was eating her candy, and her voice was almost without a trace of emotion. In response Asya went even redder and hid behind Zenobia. Through Kaneko-chan, but don't you also have someone? If my memory isn't wrong, someone from the same year but from a different class. I believe his name was Hijama. Taken by surprise by Zenobia's sudden remark, Kaneko widened her little eyes. How do you know about that? Stuttering in her response, Kaneko blushed. So the rumor was true. You did like the youngest brother of Saoji and Ryutaro. Irina started with a face full of surprise. So is the other rumor that Ravel is also after him true? She asked Kaneko again. One could see how her face changed from the previous blushing, it became emotionless, and sharp, even her eyes became slightly cold. HMPH. That fried chicken is unfortunately also after him, but she will never win. After all, I am at an advantage, sooner or later he will confess to me. I have the feeling it would be at the ending of the month. Kaneko replied with a full sentence filled with a lot of words. Something not normal about her, showing proof that she truly liked the Hijama. While continuing their walk, Irina made a question that made the hidden brown-haired boy react. Suo? What do you like about Kaneko-chan? She answered at a speed faster than a knight's. He is no pervert. I hate perverts. Especially perverted senpai. He's the worst of the worst, real scum. WSHH. Quite the rude words towards Ice-kun there, but I have to agree. I hate how he's always thinking about doing something perverted. Give me the creep. She had a face filled with slight disgust. Don't be that cruel towards Ice. Those words made Issei smile slightly. At least, someone cared about him and didn't spit behind his back. However, that smile turned into a scowl. Although he is really perverted and we all hate that about him, he's still kind. So you could say it somehow counters it, Zenobia said, but the stares from Irina and Kaneko and even the slight glare of Asya made her retract her words. Okay. Don't look at me with those eyes. She raised both arms up. I mean, sure, he really is dumb and foolish to the extreme, even for me to say. Let's not mention perverted and even lustful, but his kindness was always a good trait. Even though he has many more bad ones than good ones. Zenobia said, but Kaneko replied with a tone filled with sarcasm and scorn. One good, everything else bad. That caused Asya and Irina to giggle and Zenobia to say. Well, that's true. She said without any remorse in her face. Well, now that we have someone that's not bad to us, you could say that all those bad memories will be gone. The blue-haired said to them. Causing the rest of the girls to nod and loudly say. True, much better than before. That comment, blarg, caused Issei to vomit another mouthful of blood. They soon walked away from the park, their silhouettes moving away from his location. Issei was still hiding behind the bush. He couldn't move, even breathing was a hassle. The pain he felt before now came twice and 3 times as bad. It caused his body to convulse. The spots he felt before in his chest were now burning hot. Other places around his body were feeling the exact same. Blood started to come out his mouth, choking him. He could barely hear the voice of his partner, his head filled with something else entirely. So it was true, everyone told lies to me, his thoughts were reaching a terrible state. The way they acted towards me. He screamed inside his head, making a purple light to start surrounding his body. Those smiles given to me. The light increased in density and made his eyes change from yellow to pitch black. All that so-called love. All of it was a lie. He screamed with all of his force, making the light cover his body, as if protecting him. They always hated me. All those moments were nothing but lies, 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 lies. He screamed, expelling the light from his body, covering his surroundings with only purple and black particles. Afterward, a weird miasma started to come out of his body. It was like a fog that covered the ground, not showing the green grass beneath him. It was black in color with little hints of red, a violet light was shining at random intervals. The feelings he now experienced were nothing but sadness, frustration, pain, agony, rage, grief, shame, and so many more. Repeating his monologue over and over again, inside his mind. The scene of Ria's and Akeno with that fucker. The words from Zenobia, Irina, Asya, and Kaneko. The truth about why were they never, not even for a moment with him in the past 2 months, slowly unraveled itself before his eyes. They were with someone else. Every single one of them. They lied and used him just during the moments when they would surely die. Just when they needed something. Just when they needed a shield. Just for their own personal gain. The miasma surrounding him was taking the form of a second skin, giving him a really frightening look. A weird mark appeared on the left side of his forehead, and at that moment, he felt his body being filled with power. The pain he felt before was still there, but not as strong as before. He felt how the entire world started to change. A door opened before him, in the worst moment of his life, yet he didn't even know about it. The horrible emotions he felt started to corrupt his mind. He suddenly lost control of himself, and the miasma that was gathering in the form of a second skin broke loose. Scene change. Kuo Town. Everyone inside Kuo Town started to feel odd. Some started to feel goosebumps all over their skin. Others couldn't breathe properly, barely having the strength to hold their own breath. Others started to sweat profusely and felt cold and chills all over their body. Their survival instincts were telling them to run, the further the better. However, a huge pressure fell upon everyone, paralyzing them on the spot. Their faces lost all color, and they all could feel as if a disaster was about to happen. Some of them got lucky and just fainted after some time, but others had to deal with this. However, everyone inside the city, whether supernatural or not, started to experience those symptoms. As if something terrible just happened. As if the balance and peace of the world was just broken. As if a chained monster just broke his bindings. The clear and beautiful night sky turned pitch black, not even the moon could be seen. Fog started to appear around the city, giving it a spectral look. Coldness erupted everywhere, and a menacing vibe surrounded every living soul. They could feel their hearts being gripped by an invisible hand, ready to crush them with a single movement. At the same time, the same sensation was experienced by all of the ones inside Kuo's college division. How could that be possible? It's halfway through summer, even if it's nighttime, this is ridiculous. Ryaiji said, letting out his breath in between his hands. One could still see the frozen breath in the air slowly dissipating. He knew that this climate change was not normal. Looking towards Akeno and Rias, he saw them surprised and frightened for whatever reason it may be. However, they didn't move, so he became worried. Walking towards them, he felt how in the place they were standing the atmosphere felt many times worse. As if all of this was directed towards them. Their lips were pale, almost blue. Their faces drained of all color, and they were barely hanging on to their consciousness. They were shaking, their teeth also chattered noisily. Sweat started to flow down their foreheads, just like a terrible fever. They were petrified, not daring to move an inch. He tried to move closer, but when he reached just 10 feet away from them, he fell to his knees, trembling all over and breathing heavily. Whatever was the cause of this ridiculous climatic change, it didn't want him to get near them. In other places around Kuo, the rest of the girls Arena, Asia, Zenobia, Ravel, and Kaneko felt the exact same way as Rias and Akeno. Their bodies completely frozen, as if trapped in ice. But just as the feeling came from nowhere, it was also gone. They were freed from that feeling of terror. Like it was a bad joke from the heavens, as if it didn't even exist, but they knew it was real. However, no one else felt what they did. The symptoms they felt compared to the rest were vastly different, and in fear of making whatever it was that did this angry, they did not dare report it to the higher-ups. The sky cleared up, the moon could be seen amongst the many clouds in the sky, but the mist was still there. The coldness disappeared, and instead, the climate of a normal chilly summer night appeared. The sole difference was that it was much darker than before, just like midnight. They did not know what had happened, it was too mysterious. Thankfully no one got hurt, they were the worst ones of the bunch, but after a couple of minutes they returned back to normal. But that sensation, that feeling of impending death was something they will never forget. Scene change. Park. Trying not to scream his lungs out, in the middle of the park, laid a boy on his knees. The miasma that he was expelling caused the air around him to cool, and the ground to crack. Faint tremors occurred inside the park, but luckily no one was near. Suddenly, he looked upwards. Seeing nothing but the pitch-black sky, eyed devoid of any kind of feeling and light. Letting those bad emotions inside of him take control, he summoned the boosted gear. That surprised and scared Drake. He knew what his partner wanted to do. He thought that they had lost it after gaining a new power. But it seemed that it was still there. The Juggernaut drive. But the voice that came from the grave. A voice that seemed to reach the deepest depths of the entirety of hell. He chanted. I, who am about to awaken. Partner. Wait, don't do it. They are not worthy of you sacrificing your life to ensure their destruction. Listen to me. Is this really how you want everything to end? The dragon hurriedly said to his partner, clearly worried. At the same time he felt anger and disgust towards those women. Yet the answer of his partner was only another chant. I'm the heavenly dragon who has stolen the principles of domination from God. Shit. Partner, listen to my voice. Is this what you want, killing innocent people that did nothing wrong except being in the wrong place at the wrong time? You are better than this. Show them not by destroying, but by your own strength that you are different from what they say. Noticing that the next part of the chant was not coming as quickly as before, he knew his partner was still there. Broken beyond repair, but still there. It wasn't much time, the next part of the chant was soon heard. I laugh at the infinite, and I grieve at the dream. This time the chant came more abruptly, as if he didn't want to continue. Drake took advantage of it. Partner. Issei. Please don't do it. I know you are suffering. I know you want revenge, but this is not the way. Breaking his speech, the next part of the chant became present. I shall become the red dragon of domination. Come on, Issei. Come back to your senses. You're the best possessor of the boosted gear in history. The one with the greatest potential. The one I dare to call a friend. Don't you dare go down that path that leaves nothing but pain and agony. He was desperate. Don't you dare leave after all we have been through. I know you can overcome this, just like you always have, my friend. So show me one more time how Haidu Issei makes the impossible possible. As the words of Drake finished, the chant also stopped. The glowing and trembling of the park was now gone. The boosted gear dissipated, becoming red particles of light. Issei fell down, barely conscious. He was breathing and sweating heavily. So I am your friend Drake. Good to know I at least have someone I can trust. Thanks for everything, and sorry about scaring you. We can speak about that later. I am going to faint, being his last words of the day he fell asleep. One couldn't blame him, after all, this day was just horrible. As always you make me worry, but I could not have asked for a better partner. He sighed in relief. Better rest, Issei, because that darkness you showed is something that will make you even stronger. Haha. I cannot wait to tell you about it, young Drake. Saying those words with so much pride and arrogance, Drake decided to rest as well. If he is capable of mastering that darkness, then we would have a new heavenly dragon running around the world. Those were his thoughts. Second flashback. End. Part 1 is over. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the playlist that I have created and enjoy. Link is in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.